Right, well now we're actually going to start drafting and getting it down on paper. So we've got a great starting point here. Let's look at the building blocks so far. We know what we want to include and we've thought about how we might do it. So our key content and our skills for success, reflecting on our experiences and some key teaching and learning concepts that we looked at in the first few videos. The first things you'll want to get down on paper are the practical things. Consult the calendar, so mark out the assessment weeks, and your course leader can give you these, and mark out the lesson ending, so make sure that you've got the right lesson ending and that you're not putting extra content in that you're not actually going to be able to deliver. No one's actually got 30 weeks of teaching, so you want to work out exactly how many weeks you've got. And then thinking about the calendar, how should you allocate the time you have between your various topics? So think about this roughly, and you can make changes as you go on. Are there any formal assessments, or there will be, such as essays, exams, etc., that you'll need to work around? How can you schedule time for consolidation of learning and revision? And are there times where students are perhaps feeling a little bit flat? So coming back after Christmas is a time when students perhaps lose a bit of enthusiasm. And how can you place an activity in those key times to make it a little bit more fun and keep the momentum going, keep them engaged? So remember a few videos ago we were talking about the zone of proximal development. Well, in order for us to be able to scaffold learning effectively, we need to know where students are at with their learning in the beginning. And you might have a pretty good idea of where the class will be at generally, based on your experience. Perhaps if you taught this module before, you've taught students at that level before. But how can you get to know your learners more quickly? Think about the prior knowledge and skills that students should have at the start of the course and how you might assess this. So how will you address gaps in the knowledge and skills in your initial assessment? Because it's probably going to uncover a few. Think about incorporating teaching and learning activities that incorporate what the students already know and can build on that quite quickly. You'll also want to put some time aside to help students develop relationships. So this is particularly important for first year students. Think about how you can break the ice. What sort of activities will help students settle into the class and make them feel more comfortable. And think about how you can put anxious students at ease in a potentially new and daunting environment. And also don't, dive straight in. Setting out why the module is important, what will be covered, and what you expect from students in terms of their behaviour in class, but also what you're expected to be able to achieve at the end, will help set them on the right track. A good thing to do here is to bring in some students from the year above or some alumni to talk about their experiences on the module and what they personally gained from it. So now we can return to our content and skills, which you've already kind of roughly mapped out. So whether you have made bullet points or done a concept map, get that out and then start to think about the actual order of the content and skills that you want to deliver throughout the year. And then you can begin to devise intended learning outcomes for each lesson. What do you expect all learners to be able to achieve? So what's that base level? And also think about perhaps extension tasks, things for the high level students to be able to do in your lessons too. So when it comes to your learning outcomes, you want to assess whether they are SMART. So are they specific? Are they clear and concise? Are they measurable? So are they active learning outcomes? Can you actually assess them in class through some sort of activity and feedback, whether that be feedback from you as a tutor, from peers, or self-assessment? Are they achievable? Are they at the right level? Is this something you want to think about when you're ordering them? Are students actually set up to be able to gain that next level of understanding? Are they relevant? So are they actually aligned with the assessment tasks and with the module learning outcomes? And are they time bound? So do they take place within the lesson itself, or do they relate to perhaps homework that you set for the students? And then you want to do a lot of refining, and this is what's going to take you some time and probably spill over to the next process, so once you've received your feedback from your critical reader and your scheme. When you're refining, you really want to review your lesson learning outcomes, so give yourself some time and then look at them. Are they in the right order? Maybe get some feedback, for some informal feedback from some colleagues as well. Have you carefully aligned them with the module intended learning outcomes? What teaching and learning activities will help your learners grasp the knowledge, understanding and skills that you actually want them to achieve? Think about resources as well. So what's available? What can you obtain? What can you create that are going to best support the learning activities? You might want to plan some of these in advance. Think about guests. So can you plan for a guest or two, perhaps in weeks where you're not so hot on the stuff that you're covering? And try and keep these to terms 1 and 2, because we know student attendance in term 3 is pretty poor, and we're going to try and avoid bringing guests in term 3 next year. Preparation of further studies. This is quite a big one. And it can be quite daunting to plan all this out in advance. So again, focus on term 1 for the specifics, and then you can always switch it up in terms 2 and term 3. So if you set homework, try and link this to what's going on in the lesson. So spend some time in class actually addressing the skills the students are going to need to do the homework. And also think about some of these broader transferable skills that students need to develop in order to be successful in actually completing homework, like time management and independent study. You might want to embed some activities that strengthen those skills towards the start of the year, so that students have a greater chance of being able to actually do their homework, which they're notoriously not very good at. And make the most of blended learning. So you can create resources on Moodle, you can link to texts, videos, podcasts. You can use the Moodle activities, so quizzes and things, to encourage students to test their ideas, share their work, etc. And you can also plan out reading. So you could set specific pieces and stick these in your scheme, or perhaps research areas. But it's always a good idea, I think, to include intended learning outcome when you're setting reading. So explain what you want students to actually do with that bit of reading. Because, as we said before, it's a pretty passive activity if they're not actually doing something as well as the reading. So explain what you want them to do, things like summarise, critique, reimagine, whatever it might be. Stick that in there as well. And don't forget to refer to the core text in the module guide. By this point you should have had a look through them and just made sure they're fit for purpose. And Harvard reference any reading that you're putting in there as well. We expect students to do it, so we should definitely do it. And I will stick the BIM Harvard referencing guide, because we have a specific way of doing it, in the essential resources section of this course. And as you're refining, you also want to focus on how learning will be assessed. So how will you actually provide feedback to students in class on how well they're doing and what they can do to improve further. Plan opportunities for ongoing formative assessment and feedback. And in each lesson, you really should be able to assess whether or not the students have successfully achieved the intended learning outcomes, as should the students. So there should be a way of seeing some actual visible learning going on in your lessons. So think about how you can build this into your teaching and learning activities, how you can plan peer assessment and feedback, and how you can provide support to help the students grow in confidence when they're giving feedback to their peers. So especially in first year, you might want to build in some structured feedback activities like start, stop, continue or medal mission to help focus students in the delivery of their feedback. So I probably would approach it in this order, but it's totally up to you how you do it. So I'd start with some rough ideas for how you might lay out content, start filling in the titles for each of the weeks, taking into account the assessment weeks, and then I'd focus on putting them in the right order, moving them around a little bit. And then I'd move on to the intended learning outcomes, defining these, making them active, specific, aligned, stick to probably 2 max per session. You can always add more when you actually come to do your lesson. Sorry, that's my mum on the phone. Where was I? Defining intended learning outcomes for the session. So yeah, maybe stick to 2. You can add more as you do your actual in-depth lesson plans throughout the year, but keep it pretty concise and just focus on the main things that you want to cover. You can always embellish later on. Then I would plan the teaching and learning activities that align with these intended learning outcomes, the things that are going to help students grasp the intended learning outcomes, demonstrate them and ensure that you can assess their learning. And then I would think about the prep and the further study and how I would link those to the intended learning outcomes and teaching and learning activities. If you think about solo here, it's quite useful. So when you're asking students to prepare, perhaps think about the level beneath that you want to achieve in the lesson itself. So getting students to do some research is a really good idea, to bring ideas together to the class, and then you can build on those, connect them together in the class itself. And in terms of further study, plan learning activities that will take it that step further, that will strengthen the learning, perhaps encouraging them to apply a concept in a slightly different context, for example. So do your best with this. Don't stress. There is no such thing as a perfect scheme of work. The whole idea of this is that you just make improvements on the one you currently have, and just really engage with your own development as a teacher, and just general enhancing of our practice. Focus on term 1. So we do want you to do the full 30 weeks or whatever it may be, the full scheme, but you can add more detail in the first 10 weeks. Because we know that things change. When you meet your students, you'll assess their current knowledge and understanding and skills, and you might go, oh God, I've got it wrong, and then you need to change it, and that's totally fine. It's much better to do that and to stick rigidly with what you've planned out if it's not going to work. So yeah, put the real energy into term 1, but make sure that you've still planned out the skeleton of term 2 and 3. So perhaps in term 1 you'll put more detail into their teaching and learning activities, or in terms 2 and 3 you keep that bit a bit more vague until you get there. Don't rush it. Leave time to review, reflect and edit, and don't worry about it being perfect when you submit the draft. The whole idea of this is that you get support, and if you're struggling, then you can always go to your course leader for help before that, or submit some questions or notes on your scheme to get some perhaps more specific feedback on areas that you want to improve. Please also check out the scheme of work examples for some inspiration or extra guidance. There's also loads of resources linked. There's the discussion board, so if you've got a question, then please just stick it up there, and either myself or just another member of the teaching team might be able to help you with that. And do remember that if you're teaching a BA1 module, so a Level 4 University of Sussex module, there is a separate video which just talks you through how to find the curriculum resources for those.